Hey, how's it going? Hope you're doing good. And today we're going to do part three of this Making a Song series. I think this is going to be the last part, but we'll see where we are at the end of this video. Also, I just want to say a really quick thank you. You've all reacted really positively to parts one and two. I posted them while I was away in France on a very, very secret project, which you'll hear about in a few months. There will be some sort of like travel vlog coming as well, which I'm really excited about. So yeah, let's get on with part three and let's jump into the song. So here we are with the song. It hasn't changed since we finished part two. The only thing that has changed is that I've named the song. I'm going to call the song Intuition because I feel like I liked the word intuition. It's a word I feel like has been coming up a lot for me lately, but also tuition, tutorials, blah. Like I thought it was pretty cool. And also once the song is out, it will be in the description and it'll be a free download on my Bandcamp. So yeah, you'll be able to hear it in full quality for free, and that's pretty cool. So what are we doing today? We are going to take this song and turn it into a full sort of 2 to 3 minute song. We're not going to be super strict on the length of the song or anything like that. We're not writing it for any purpose. We're not trying to get it into a certain label or anything like that. We are just trying to turn this idea that is 8 bars long into a full song that functions and is listenable and remains engaging for the whole way through, especially for the sort of lo-fi genre. So we're not trying to grab too much attention, but we're also not trying to make it super boring and super sleepy. And as a bit of a disclaimer, I have not like pre-prepared anything for this. I don't know what I want to do with the song. So this video is going to be a little bit different to parts 1 and 2, where I had some idea of what I was doing going into it. And this is really just going to be me doing this as I would in real time and figuring out what things need to be added, what things need to be taken away, and how to kind of keep the song engaging the whole way through. So we're going to touch on drums, we're going to touch on guitars, we're going to touch on synths and other sort of details, as well as just overall structure building for this song and making it kind of play out in sort of interesting and dynamic way. So let's crack on with it. So let's start by just quickly listening to the full 8-bar loop as it stands right now and seeing how that sort of feels. Okay, so I think it's sounding cool. First things first, let's build an intro, because that feels like something that's pretty straightforward and easy to do. So I usually like to start by kind of leaving 8 or more bars for an intro. It might end up being that I shorten it down to 4. It might be that I decide to get rid of it entirely. But let's build an intro and see how that feels. Because the good thing with an intro is you can sort of repurpose it into a bridge or an outro pretty easily. So it's a great way to kind of start building other sections of the song without doing something that's heavily committed that you can't then sort of reuse. It's not something you're going to necessarily have to completely delete. So let's start by taking that guitar drone, wherever that is. I think it's this one here. Or this one. That's the one. So let's take that and put that in the intro. What I'm also going to do with this, that I quite like to do with audio files, especially when they're sort of droning and like they have a ton of reverb on them, is just stretch the audio file. So let's stretch it longer than it needs to be. So let's go to like 12 bars, shall we say? Just so we have a bit more to play with. So when I'm moving stuff around from here, it's really just me kind of creating space and, you know, allowing myself to work in a different section. But let's also add a fade into that so it slowly comes in over time. Cool, that's sounding really nice, and I think we can make something over that. It's deciding what elements we want to introduce at what point and when sort of makes the most sense. I'm actually thinking now that we've got 12 bars, I might do sort of a very light version of this sort of drop before we get into it. So that in the last sort of 4 bars here, we could put these sort of brush drums. So you get this sort of, to kind of, you know, slowly bring the song in. I feel like this isn't a song you're going to want to jump right into straight away. Obviously, it depends on the song. I might actually give us another bar, I think, just to make sure that we have plenty of room in the song so that we can actually have, before any other instruments start, you get a bar of I think that doing things like this, rather than having the song follow a rigid sort of multiple of 4 or multiple of 2 bar count, it just allows you to kind of create a bit of space between elements. It's a way of making something feel less like it's been built out of loops, because loops are often sort of 4 to 8 to sort of 16 bars. And I think if you kind of stick so kind of closely to that, you end up either way with something that feels a bit more loop driven. And I try to avoid that, especially because, you know, we're not using pre-made loops really here. So our chords, let's just remind myself of them. Okay, cool. So we could have like a piano section that comes in with some slightly different chords for the intro. Let's just loop this. It's also just, for now, let's turn on a metronome just so I'm definitely playing to the bars. We have, yeah, we do, cool. Okay, cool. I think I've got a piano part, so I'm thinking something. Okay. Let me bring up the MIDI as well so you can actually see what I'm playing while I play this in. There we go. So now we have a piano part. Kind of messed up the sustain there, but you know, whatever. I'm also going to bring these velocities down because I played it quite heavily. Harshly, shall we say. I'm also feeling like trying an RC20 on the piano, even if it just ends up being for the intro. Turn off the noise. Try bringing in some of the guitars as well. Maybe have those fade in as well. Okay, so the intro is coming together. I'm now just thinking about what to do with this little section here. And I'm thinking for now, especially with what we're talking about with creating space, let's copy the piano over, but let's only keep everything up to that first chord of the last bar after the drums sort of drop out there. So let's go up to here. This will all sort of make sense as we go, hopefully. Okay, cool. So I'm getting ideas now for the intro. This is just kind of doing stuff as I go, basically. So if we, for now, take this piano part here, take just that last chord, quantize it, so it's now perfectly on the beat. So now we have that on it, that chord on its own. I'm just going to mix it down. So that is kind of the same thing, I guess, as freezing it. I'm not sure with Ableton and other DAWs. So now we have a little file that's just that chord. I'm going to reverse it with Control and R, or it's somewhere in these menus as well. There we go, reverse audio. We could even try putting that at the start as well. So something that I don't see a lot of tutorials on, because it's not something you could necessarily make a whole video on, is just paying attention to really small things when it comes to transitions. So like here with this reverse piano, trying it in the intro, you can actually see with the audio file, if I undo everything we've done there, and now it's moving me around, which is not very helpful, you can actually sort of see if we look at the wave file, that the audio of the piano, the reverse note, even though we had it quantized and perfectly on the beat, there is this sort of gap of silence here. So what I've done effectively here is move the file forwards. It keeps moving things around, so I apologize. But now you can see I brought the end to actually be a little bit after the second bar. And then we add a fade and shorten the file down. So it makes that transition feel just a little bit more natural, because if we have the file as it was, you can hear it sort of stops, whereas if we put everything back, there are other things you can do with that as well that can be quite helpful. We could add a delay to it to create a bit of a tail. So we could even try like a quarter note delay or something. Oh, it's I quite like how that sounds actually for the intro. I think we'll only use it for the intro because I want to create like a real stop before the drums come in. So let's automate the mix on the delay down so it's completely off by the time we get to this part. There we go. So now we can start thinking about like a drum fill. So let's just duplicate that over and just keep that last brush snare. Again, I think they'll have the same problem here where the piano actually ends just a little, or the reverse piano rather, ends just a little bit before our snare hits. So let's do the same thing again. And by adding a fade, what that'll do is it just kind of helps reduce any like clicks or pops from any sort of harsh file ending, especially when you're kind of working with raw audio like that. You can just get a little like as the file actually ends. There we go. So now we're actually working towards something of an intro that's kind of got its own sort of feel. We've got different chords, even though we're obviously working within the same key. We're introducing guitar parts that you start hearing later, and we can start thinking about other things we might want to add. I am sort of hearing like a little like twinkly sort of synth arp. So I think for this, we're going to try and use Arturia's Jun-6 V, which is a Juno 106, I think, emulation. There's a lot of great Juno plugin emulations out there. I really love Arturia browsers. I'm such a fanboy of Arturia plugins. I think they just make the creation process so easy. So we have this sound, which I think is just a little bit long at the moment. We can lose the reverb as well. And the delay. So I think it'll go around here. Let's play it in this section though. Okay, right. I think we have our ARP, so let's play in the MIDI. Terrible playing, but you know, it's fine. So we'll just shorten these notes down to all be 16ths. They're all now quantized, so they're all perfectly on the beat. Chuck that over to my chords bus. I guess I should have talked about my sidechain routing. So I have sidechains set up in my project. A little bit of a detour here. which I have different sidechains for different things. So I have a reverb bus, which has its own sidechain. I have what I call a chords bus, which is really just kind of synths and pianos and stuff. Then I have a guitars bus. All of these have their own sidechains with their own curves. So I use this plugin, Vengeance Multiband Sidechain. It's something I started using in EDM, and what I really like about it is that it does volume shaping. It doesn't do compression, so I'm not compressing the signal. I'm using the audio from my kick as a send to trigger the sidechain, which is turning down the volume, and then it's coming up over this curve. You can use it as a multiband thing. I never do. I can change the time base as well, so I can change how long it takes, for the curve to take place. I already have these buses set up, so if you see me change a bus over here from like main to like chords or guitar or anything, that's just me routing stuff to sidechain, because otherwise I will forget to do it later. So let's also just add an EQ to this. I want it to be quite a subtle element and something that has quite a lot of space to it. So for delay, we'll use probably this tape delay from Arturia once again, because I love Arturia. So let's see if we can get something as a delay that's quite like weird. I also kind of want a bit of like fizz on this sound, and not like the loop we were using for the drums. I kind of want something to give it like a bit of like sizzle on like the high end. So I'm actually thinking of trying to run it through an amp simulator, which I know is a little bit crazy, but let's try running it through Guitar Rig before it hits the delay. Okay, that's definitely getting there, and it's sounding quite cool. It just needs a bit more like coloring in the sound. We're going to try this. It's a plugin called the King's Microphones from Waves. I think they were it was something to do with the King's speech or something, like the movie. I don't remember. There we go. That's really, really cool now. That's sounding really interesting. I'm then thinking just some sort of like big reverb. There was a new reverb mode added to Valhalla Vintage Verb recently called Palace, which just sounds amazing. We'll try Cathedral as well. Okay, I'm thinking of sticking with Palace there. I'm also just going to lose some of the highs a little bit. I know we added some sort of fizz to the sound, but it was more thinking about the character versus how it, obviously sits in the mix. Okay, and then the last thing that I want to do with this is just add a Waves Mondo mod to it, get it moving around the stereo field just a little bit and pretty slowly as well. Then what we'll do with that as a last thing is we will just automate it up with this plugin called Mix Tool. I know that we could automate the fader, but I don't like doing that just because it creates like a bit of a pain when you're trying to mix, because it means that I'm not using the faders. I never automate my volume faders on my mixer just because I find it quite restrictive. or find it to be quite restrictive because I don't like having to go and edit automation. That to me feels longer than just using a gain plugin and just turning something up and down at the right point in the plugin chain. And the thing to think about with that as well, I guess, is if you're especially doing something that's more ambient, if you have something running into like a distortion or a guitar amp sim or something, actually automating the volume of it, the gain, before it hits that is going to give a different effect because you are automating how much of the gain of the signal is going into the distortion or amp sim rather than automating the fully distorted amp simulated sound after it comes out. So thinking about where you do this automation will obviously give you different results. So let's just automate that up kind of from about there. Okay, perfect. That sounds great. So the only other thing that I think this intro probably needs is some sort of like drone texture, some sort of pad that doesn't really change what it's playing, but the sound itself has a bit of like evolution to it. So we are going to use Absynth 5 to try and see if we can find some interesting sounding pads. And what we're going to do is we're going to play like a sort of inverted fifth of the key that we're in. So we are in F sharp major. So our root here is F sharp and we are doing a C sharp down here. So instead of playing it like this, if you can see the little blue bits here, we're just taking that top note, moving it down an octave. To be fair, that sound might work. Absynth stuff tends to sound like a bit synthy, so what I quite like to do is mess around with like different reverbs. Really like that. Again, I want to add like some sort of like texture to it. So we'll try before the shimmer verb, we will try adding some sort of like texture with sketch cassette here. We'll try a chorus on it actually as well. Cool, let's see how that all feels now together. And what if we move the drone down an octave? Okay, I've got an idea for a guitar part, so we're gonna record some guitars. Something that I like to do when I'm working on intro, once I've got an intro structure in place where it's built out of maybe a few loops, a few sort of changing textures or something like that, is start to think about maybe adding something that is played in and has a sort of improvisational sort of feel to it that I'm not necessarily writing a specific melody, I'm more finding an idea that I like and then I'm sort of recording something that doesn't loop and I just play for the whole section that I'm kind of writing for. So what I'm going to do here is just noodle around sort of something kind of like that. And just try and make something that, you know, feels good as opposed to sitting down and writing something for the entire sort of 12-bar section. have a guitar part for the intro now that doesn't change the whole way through. I'm also thinking of taking one of the leads and introducing them over those last 4 bars, and then I think we've got an intro. I think it might have been this lead. Okay, so what I want to do with that is, now that we've, because we know that that lead is something that when we put it together, it was a lead that we really liked and was going to become one of the focal points of the song. So I don't want to give it away in this section of the intro. So what we're going to do is create a duplicate of the track and make a version of that that is maybe telephone, so kind of like this. Cool. So now we can move into our first drum section. So we're finally past the intro, and I'm thinking of just putting some sort of like little kick there as well. And then we can just see how that feels. So let's throw it straight into it and let's see how that transition now feels. Let's go from here. Okay, so I think what you can probably hear there is that when it's dropping into it from the intro, it's right now you've got a different chord progression, you're introducing quite a few more guitar parts, and you're not necessarily carrying over a lot of things from the intro. So we need to make that transition a bit smoother, and we need to maybe think about how we bring in the kind of drop section as something that doesn't feel quite so developed, and we can start building on that idea from there, because we're already introducing drums and bass at this point, so the song is becoming a lot fuller and we're bringing in a lot of new things at once. So for a listener, it's quite jarring. I also just want to add in a second little kick here that's a bit quieter. So first things first, let's try removing any guitars that aren't already there in the intro. So let's just move those into another section. So let's take this half and these guitars that aren't there in the intro, move them over here for the time being, and see how that feels. I actually think as well we could get away with removing the kind of disgusting green guitars as well. I think the next thing as well is that these piano notes are quite they're quite harsher compared to the intro. So I think we bring those down to a similar sort of velocity so that we're not changing the energy way too much. There we go. That already feels so much more cohesive. So now I think we can start taking that first 4 bars and then just keep building on it. And so we can introduce maybe the main lead at this point. I'm thinking as well we take the little synth up and start fading that up at this point as well, so we bring back more elements from the intro. Okay, so at this point, what we need to think about is if we want the drum section to go on longer, which we do because let's be honest, it's shorter than the intro. We want this beat section to feel quite long and quite like a substantial part of the song because that's the style of song we're making. So if we were to just double it and keep it this sort of length and have the drums be completely the same, the drums don't change, the bass doesn't change, the chords don't change in any way, the arrangement in itself isn't really changing, we're not creating something that feels fresh for the listener, because if you think about it, they're going from bar 15, which is at 49 seconds, to bar 31 at basically nearly a minute of nothing really changing in the sort of structure of the song. So obviously you could drop out to a section without drums at this point. I don't think that's maybe the right thing for this song. So I think what we want to do is kind of keep some sort of interesting switch up that we can quite quickly come back from, that keeps the listener's ears engaged and kind of tells them that we're not just feeding them 16 bars of loops at this point. So something I quite like to do is take like a bar and change the drums for that bar and change the arrangement for that bar. So we could take the bass and just mute all the notes or delete them for that first bit, and then we can start bringing things back. So we could go like this. And let's also remove the kicks actually in that section. So I think as well, it's also a case of probably moving some of these samples so that it feels like more changes. Just going to add some small fades to them so that they don't create any clicks or pops. We could even try like taking the piano and moving it up an octave and maybe bringing the velocities down even more. And even take maybe those last few notes there, move them back down the octave, bring those velocities back up, and then do something interesting with the kick. So maybe even mirror the little kick pattern that we had in the intro there. Let's just take the whole section so it all copies in time. There we go. So that feels much more played, and all we've really done is move things around and actually take things away. So at this point we could even keep these guitars going. I'd maybe remove the little drone guitar from a bar there as well. Add some little fades to that one as well. I'm thinking as well we remove the synth up and maybe just keep that going all the way through. So this is where we can now start to maybe add some other interesting parts back. So with these green guitars, we could have them drop back in. So when we've created that little moment where we've pulled out all the low end and the energy and then brought it straight back, we can keep building on it. Because at that point, you're keeping more familiarity with the listener's ear. The drums aren't really changing when you bring them back in. You're just reintroducing them to an idea that they've already had 8 bars of at that point. We could even have that first 2 bars of the guitar lead go back to that filtered one we did for the intro. So to keep this fresh and kind of keep switching things up, because this is just how I sort of approach songwriting, I'm thinking that the lead going on for kind of basically 3/4 of this entire section is probably a bit too much. So let's remove it there. And I'm thinking what we'll probably do is maybe write like a little lead that kind of becomes a solo for a bridge section here. I'm also thinking that this section just needs like some sort of interesting synth work going on just in the background, something really dreamy to create a bit of texture. So I have the synth that I think I modified some preset that I had by this person really long time ago. And I ended up using it for my song It All Falls Into Place. So we're actually going to use the same preset and the same sound that I used for that, because I think that that will really, really fit on this song. It's basically that's the synth. You can copy the settings and everything. And then it's going into Valhalla Shimmer as well as Waves Mondo Mod as well to create like a bit of interesting movement. So I want to keep this quite like a background sort of element. So let's just play some like parts in. I'm just going to improvise them and we're going to see what we get. Okay, so there was only one note that I didn't really like there, which I think was this one. We're just gonna maybe move that to like there and just see if that sort of works. And keep this thing, we're gonna keep this part real sort of in the background. Okay, so now we're going to transition into a sort of bridge section where we're going to have a guitar solo. So we are going to record the guitar solo starting from bar 27 and move into the bridge. But we want to think about how we're going to transition into that bridge, what that bridge is going to feel like. Now, I don't think it wants to go all the way down to a really ambient style bridge because I think the intro already gives us quite a lot of that. So I want to keep some of the drums going, even if what we do is bring down the velocities on the drums. So even if the drums themselves get like just a little bit sort of quieter, a little bit softer, we're maybe moving to just the brush kit. I'm also thinking that we bring back that reversed piano as well from the intro and have that kind of continue to have its delay at that point. So we bring that back. So all we're doing there is just automating back up that delay. I'm also thinking for this bridge as well that we maybe don't have, if it's an 8-bar bridge, let's say, that we don't have a chord progression for the first 4 bars of it, because I think the listener has constantly had chords for this entire song at this point. So we can maybe try and make something that just feels like it's like a sort of interesting interaction of all these different harmonics and just harmonies, and everything's kind of working to create its own sort of chords, I guess, in their own way. I'm not making any sense, but I think you get what I mean. So I think we can start to maybe bring back some of like maybe the drone from the intro, have that start bar early. And then I'm thinking, once we bring these chords back in, let's make them really soft, but let's maybe even try making them really low and warm. It might be that we don't need a piano for this, maybe we need more of like a Rhodes sort of sound. Yeah, I think that needs like a Rhodes or something on it. Something just a little bit sort of different. So an E-piano that to me always sounds amazing is literally just these Mark 1 and Mark 2 sounds from the Contact Factory library. Mark 2 Soft Random I think sounds pretty good, so that might sound nice for what we're playing here. I really like how that sounds. That's really, really nice. Let's keep those velocities nice and low. Maybe even add a really subtle delay to it. I think could be quite fun. Just get the sound EQ'd a little bit. Yeah, there we go. That's sounding really, really nice. We could be kind of really, really lo-fi and chuck an RC20 on it, but I don't know how that's going to feel. Yeah, I really like that, actually. That sounds really, really nice. Cool. So I think from here we can probably just lay down some sort of interesting guitar solo lead type thing and see how that all starts to feel. And honestly, what I like to do for this is just find like an area on the guitar that feels comfortable and then just sort of improvise, really. Like I you know, obviously like so much of what I've been saying is about playing through feeling and feeling out a part rather than sitting down and writing a solo. Now, obviously I could sit down and write a solo, but for me, such a huge part of it, it really comes from just experiencing what this moment in music sort of feels like and just letting that kind of take hold. I know it all sounds a bit artsy and everything, but I just think it makes a lot of sense, at least to my messed up brain. So first things first, I'll just let the last 4 bars of the drums loop and play over them. So I think what I'm sort of working towards there is I want the solo to start quite low and then move up quite high. So it might start quite busy, but then especially as we move into that bridge section, that it will go a bit more like sparse and kind of gentle. So let's have like a bar going into it and let's just play that real quick. Messed it up, but I think I know roughly where I'm going. So with writing like big lead guitar parts like this, it really for me just is like kind of a case of just go for it and like wait for a take that sort of feels kind of right. Like so many of my guitar solos are just me improvising and just finding an idea that I like the idea of noodling around, but never really kind of committing to knowing exactly what a part is until I sort of have done enough takes, I guess. So we're just going to record and see what we get. Okay, there's some good ideas there. I kind of messed up, so let's do it. Let's do it again. There we go. I think that's the take. That's good enough. So I think that that's fine. Honestly, I think with guitar parts, I think the most important thing is to kind of know when to say something's good enough. And like, you know, like could I sit and play that part and figure out something that's perfect if I play it for like another hour? Yes. But also, like, to me, I kind of don't like how clinical that becomes. I don't like how that starts to lose my interest, and I feel like you get less sort of in the moment sort of music from me, and to me it just starts to feel clinical, really. What we could even do actually is get the drums to sort of like fade out, and then bring them back in. I think that could be quite interesting. So if we add a mix tool, fade these down with the automation, and they'll go back up literally a bar later, but then you get this sort of... so much nicer. Oh, that's really, really lovely. I really love how that feels. That's really, really cool. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is add some sort of like really interesting delay to the guitar. So we've just created a new bus for it. We're going to call it guitar delay. I'm trying to think what delay we'll use for this. Maybe we'll use Replika from Native Instruments, see if we can get some really interesting sounding delays from it. We're doing this as a send because I just think it will give us a bit more control over the delay. So we'll lock it at 100% mix. Let's see if we can get something that's like a bit more weird, I guess. I already like how that sounds. That's the current contender. Okay, I think it's that first one. We're going to just stick with it, and we're going to let that just be how it is. We are also going to try and just color the sound a little bit. So let's try using like a console on the guitar to try and just give it a bit of like a interesting sort of flavor to it. Let's turn off the gate, turn off the compression. I've found this console because I watched, well, I guess I listened to the podcast Tape Notes. They did an episode with the 1975, and I think you will probably know at this point I love randomness in my music, and this has it's a modeling of an old 60s recording mixing console, and you can randomize the channel that it uses. You can randomize it across the whole project, so every channel sounds a little bit different because it's modeling analog gear, and I love what it does to a sound, really. Really subtle. We We could even try running it through tape, running it through J37. So let's try this rock guitars preset. I never mix on headphones, so I hope that this sounds okay. I won't know until I'm editing this video. Now we can sort of go back into another drop section, as it were. And let's maybe just start bringing some of these bits over. What we're also going to do, though, for this last section is I'm thinking that if we've moved the chords over to an E piano, a Rhodes, whatever, in this bridge section, let's keep them there. Let's not let the chords go back to the piano, because it's going to create a sort of weird kind of transition. Whereas now the two sections of the song have something in their sort of DNA that's the same, in that the chords are the same, but the instrument that's playing them is very different. So it's already kind of helping to create something that helps you differentiate between the two parts, and you're not then going the two drops sound exactly the same, even if we end up reusing guitar parts, right? Okay, let's use that little reverse piano though again. We're also just going to keep the mix down on the delay here. Okay, so what we already noticed with the Rhodes there is it's getting a little bit messy. So let's just tweak the sustain MIDI, just so that on each chord that we're resetting, so we're not holding tons of voices in place, because otherwise what we'll end up with is just a really muddy sort of like low mids, which will be not very nice. So let's duplicate all those, or copy them rather. You know what, let's just do them again, because clearly I can't draw or copy automation reliably. Let's move those there and do this. So what I think you'll notice now is when we listen to this as a 4-bar loop, it will immediately sound less muddy. I think what we probably also need to do is lose the delay at that point. I think the delay works for the bridge when there's no drums, but the moment we introduce drums, it sounds a little weird. So let's automate that down and keep it there. Probably just need to tweak some of those notes as well. I think just that B sounds a little weird, so let's bring the velocity of it right the way down. What happens if we lose the other snare? Much better. So actually, yeah, that's quite an interesting development. That what we're doing here is we're removing this snare sample that we were layering with the brush snare. So let's keep this section a bit more chill. So it's like we're kind of getting ready to kind of build into an outro. And we also now have this alt lead that's come in, so that's back, and we have other kind of things going on, which is cool. We will also bring in the little drone eventually as well. So let's think about where this needs to go. Let's make it 8 bars to start with. Bring over that little ride symbol. Let's have the drone come in halfway through that. If we make this drop, I think we'll probably keep this drop at 8 bars, and we'll do something similar with the drum fade out to kind of go into an outro, because you got to think we're coming up on the sort of 2 minute 45 mark at this point. So the song is already quite long. And this is where we could go and shorten the intro. I do like to keep like Project Air songs under 3 minutes, but I don't think there's anything good about like necessarily restraining yourself all the time. Like if a song like needs that, then let it have it, you know? So I'm thinking we will do something kind of like this again. And then we can take the same chords here and probably even automate up that delay again as we're losing the drums, automate the drums down. So we're kind of already moving into an outro there, but you know, we can do that. That's allowed. Let's bring back the drone and maybe have it like finish a little bit earlier. So I'm just time stretching it because the notes aren't changing. So I think we have a pop at the start of that guitar part. Yeah, we do. So this is why we add tiny little fades. Sounds a bit weird when you hear it in isolation, but in the mix, we could even extend out the beginning of the audio file a little bit just to... We'll do that for all of them. There we go, perfect. Okay, so we haven't used this guitar part yet. There's actually a couple of guitar parts we haven't used, which is these parts. So let's see how those sound. Oh, that's our lead. We could actually just use the lead that we created. So let's do that. Sorry, I'm making decisions here. So the lead that we had from before, from part 2, we're going to have that be the main focus of these 8 bars, and then that alternate lead that's kind of low and goes all the way to the outro. Let's have that fade up. Then let's hit guitar 6. What are you? Oh, that's like a nice little thing that we can have go all the way through as well. And let's have it fade out probably around like here. I think it's nice to have different elements fade out at different rates rather than like the whole thing fade out at any one, like at one consistent rate. Let's bring back the ARP as well. So let's listen to the whole song, see if it needs anything else, and then I think we're pretty much there. Obviously the song needs mixing, but you know, whatever. So let's go. Me applauding myself. Okay, cool. I'm pretty happy with this. I do think that it probably needs a little bit more kind of work. It's a tough one. It's tough because I don't really know if this lead is used enough. This little... But then I don't know because it still works and I like that the song feels quite sort of bespoke. I am also messing with the idea of kind of taking out 4 bars from here to make the song a bit shorter. Because I mean, if those are automating up, we could... I might need to mess with this section, but I'm just thinking if we remove everything here, move the ride to there. Not only do I think it will make the song more, it'll make it shorter, that's pretty cool, but I think it will also just help, you know, make the flow feel kind of more interesting where it's constantly changing. And then that way the first drop section is as long as the intro, and the song itself goes just under, well, is pretty much bang on the 3-minute mark, that's cool. Let's see how that feels now if we go from the intro into that sort of second half of the first drop. I'm also just really quickly, sorry, we're diverting a second, but I am going to stick a Soothe on the guitar bus because I think there's a few resonances and I want to just like clean them up a little bit, especially in those sort of like high mids. Okay, so that means that the little bendy synth will continue into the bridge. Let's see how that feels. I don't hate that. I don't hate that at all, actually. Okay, that feels pretty good to me. I don't really know what else there is to add at this point. I feel like we're pretty much there. I don't want to overstuff this song. Okay, so I'm gonna say we're there. I'm gonna say that we're there with structure. I'm probably not gonna do a part 4 for this. I don't think mixing or anything is really something I'm the right person to give advice on. I've obviously touched on some of it while I've been working on this as well. Yeah, this has been a really long video. If you sat through the whole thing, thank you. That's really, really cool. But I hope it was useful. If you have any questions, anything you want me to make a video on, as always, please let me know in the comments below. And yeah, just thank you for watching. Thank you for kind of coming on this little 3-part journey with me. I really hope it was interesting. I think, the thing with making songs and the thing to remember is this is just one song. My discography is really quite big now. So it does differ for every song, and a lot of these things aren't things I would necessarily do for every song. I think a lot of the times it is this sort of, additive and sort of subtractive sort of approach when it comes to songwriting. For me, that is just such a huge part of it. Just trying things and then kind of listening to things in context. And I think probably the biggest piece of advice that I could give is to listen to things in context. Don't get stuck in the sort of 8-bar loop, or when you're building a structure at least, don't get stuck in just like listening to loops in isolation. Try and listen to things and see how sections flow into one another, and really think about it from the perspective of a listener. Is it too jarring? Is it too weird? Is it too similar? Like, do you need to create more kind of juxtaposition between different sections? It really is that. And I think you'll kind of see when we were kind of making the intro, that was probably one of the most crucial parts, because learning how to blend those two sections that had two kind of different approaches, where one is more ambient and one is obviously with a bass, and it's got drums in there as well. It is just about hearing how that works in context and seeing if you can make that flow in a way that is really satisfying. But that's pretty much my approach. This is pretty much how I make songs. But yeah, I really, really hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon for another video. There's going to be a lot more like tutorials and stuff, but I know a lot of people were asking for track breakdowns and like how I make songs and drums and guitars, and I thought, you know what, just let's make a song, let's put it out for free. If this video does really, really well, or if this series does really, really well, I will release the stems or something if that's people are interested in. And so yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Can't even talk. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.